Hey everybody, this is Vivek, and in this video I'm going to walk you through the options for business banking in the UAE. Now, if you've seen one of my previous videos, I spoke about all the difficulties and hurdles that you will encounter when you go to open a business banking account. If you haven't checked out that video, make sure you do so because there's a lot of important points that I'll be referencing from that video over here. Now, I also have a detailed article about both of these topics on my website. So if you prefer reading, make sure you check that out. For now, let's dive into the first solution that you can use to circumvent some of the issues that you will encounter when opening a business bank account. The first solution is digital banking channels like Payoneer or Wise. So Payoneer and Wise, I'm sure, if you've done business online, you will be more than familiar with what these services are. For those of you not familiar, essentially the way it works is, and I'll speak about Payoneer here because this is my personal experience. Payoneer essentially gives you a way to get paid via a link. It gives you virtual business accounts in different jurisdictions around the world. For example, the US, the UK, the EU, and Australia, and even Japan. So if you wish to get paid in those local currencies and have clients over there, you can just ask them to transfer it into those local accounts and then withdraw it to your personal account at the end of the month as profits or as revenues as you wish. Something I want to just specify here, you can open a company account with Payoneer and transfer those sort of profits to your personal account in the UAE. That is what I did initially when my business banking account was still under processing. So from my previous video, you might remember I had mentioned timelines for business banking account opening are pretty insane over here. It takes between 3 to 6 months to get an account up and running and fully sort of in a working condition. So during that time, you might think that, okay, you can't do business, but that's not the case. For those initial months, I would seriously recommend you get a Payoneer account up and running. Now, you might wonder why I'm pushing Payoneer. Well, the reason is I have Payoneer account myself with a Payoneer card and I'm extremely happy. But the other reason is that there are no other services that work. Wise or TransferWise used to work in the UAE until they were sanctioned by the government in Abu Dhabi. And as a result, if you have a UAE company, you cannot operate a Wise account. So do keep that in mind. As far as I know, Revolut does not operate in this part of the world. It's only in Europe and in sections of the US. So Revolut is not an option either. All of this makes Payoneer your best option. Now, there are advantages, as I've just discussed, but there are some disadvantages as well. You might be wondering, why can't you just continue using a Payoneer account if it's completely, fine to do so? Well, Payoneer is currently in somewhat of a gray area in that the UAE officials are not particularly concerned whether you're using Payoneer. However, you can't practically use it. For example, if you need to pay suppliers in the UAE, you'll find it a bit difficult to pay them from a Payoneer account because you'll have to use your Payoneer card, you'll have to allocate funds to the card, and then you'll have to account for those expenses in a different currency, and it's all a bit of a jumble, to be honest. It makes your accounting and bookkeeping a little difficult. The other big hurdle is that once your company crosses a threshold for VAT and for corporate taxes as well, as the UAE has just introduced them, let's say you need to receive some sort of a refund from the government. The government is not going to refund the money to a Payoneer account or any foreign account. You need to have a local business account to receive that cash. So if you don't have a local business account and are only relying on a Payoneer account, just make sure that none of these factors affect you. Generally speaking, if you are filing for VAT, every accountant and bookkeeper will warn you that unless you are VAT exempt, you should most probably open a local business account because it just keeps you safe. You can claim VAT refunds and the government is really not going to get up all in your business. Now, I just want to make it very clear, Payoneer is far from an illegal option or anything of that sort. It is not a red flag by any means. However, it's not the most practical if you're conducting business in this country. So keep that in mind. The second option is also a digital option and it's a relatively new one. And this is opening an account with a digital UAE bank like Wio or Yap. Now, I must warn you, everything that I usually talk about in these videos is my personal experience. In this case, this is anecdotal experience from my friends and other people that I know who are using this service. I personally haven't used it, so do keep that in mind. Now, from everything that I've heard, Wio banking is great, and the account opening and every other process in terms of access to funds, withdrawals, etc. are great. I haven't heard any major complaints about Wio, and it tends to be a great tool for everybody. With regards to Yap, I have heard a few customer service complaints, and to be honest, I don't think Yap actually offers business banking at this point, but it's something that might change very soon, so you might want to get in touch with them and inquire. So Wio and Yap are great options right now in the UAE. For example, if you're a free zone company, you can instantly receive a bank account from Wio soon after you receive your trade license. One of my friends actually did this, and he's extremely happy with it and hasn't faced any hurdles as yet. Now, that's the advantage. The disadvantage is that these channels are still relatively unproven. And to be honest, most people who open accounts with these banks, they do so because they find opening a physical bank account extremely difficult. For example, my friend who I just referred to, his company is in the free zone, and no traditional local bank would open an account for him. So Wio was really his only choice. He wasn't comfortable using Payoneer, so he decided to use it. Now, that's my biggest issue with this particular choice. It's still unproven. They are great solutions so far, and there haven't been any issues. But then again, they are largely untested compared to the other options that I'll be talking about in this list. So if you prioritize convenience and you really need an account to get up and running as quickly as possible, and you're not comfortable using Payoneer, I would suggest using one of these digital bank solutions. Now, just something to keep in mind, there are other digital banks as well. For example, Emirates NBD has a digital bank, Mashreq has a digital bank, as does ADCB. But those digital banks that are affiliated with existing local banks, they usually don't open company accounts for free zone companies or mainland companies, etc., without a lot of scrutiny. And really, you'll run into the same hurdles that I mentioned in my previous video if you choose those options. So keep that in mind. The two options that I mentioned are Wio and Yap. Those are traditionally the ones that are working well, but just remember they're a bit untested. However, if you need a quick solution, they're a good choice. The next option that you have in terms of escaping all the hurdles in business banking is to really go the traditional route and buy products from the bank itself. Now, this deserves a little bit of a background. In my previous video, I spoke about how when I approached various banks, I was being hit with these different requirements. One of the reasons I was being hit with these requirements was because the person offering them needed to earn some sort of a commission on opening my bank account. Now, the way I understand it, people who open bank accounts receive very little commission for actually opening an account. They receive far greater commissions for selling products like, say, credit cards, life insurance policies, mortgages, home loans, personal loans, etc. So usually what happens is a business banking account is a losing proposition for a local bank. And because of that, the people who work for the bank, they look to boost their numbers a little bit by selling these additional products. Now, if you can afford it, you should certainly go ahead and buy some of these products. But, it is more of a traditional choice. At the end of it, you'll still be faced with the same account opening timelines. Don't expect any sort of shortcuts here. However, once you buy the product and once you fill out all the forms, you're almost certainly guaranteed to receive a physical local bank account, which really removes all sorts of hurdles for you. You can conduct business, you can pay local suppliers, you won't have issues receiving VAT refunds or anything of that sort. So this option costs a bit, but if you really want to be 100% safe and don't mind buying additional products, this is something to consider. The next option, which is the most expensive, and frankly, it's one that I wouldn't recommend, is paying a consultant to open a business bank account for you. Now, the way a consultant works, and usually you'll find these consultants attached to companies that open businesses in the UAE. The way it works is you'll find that these bank accounts opening solutions come pre-packaged with the trade license issuer. So for example, you might go to a company that opens businesses in different free zones, and they'll tell you that, okay, if you want just a business license, you pay us 10,000 dirhams. If you want a company license with a bank account, you pay us, say, 20 or 25,000 dirhams. Now, in reality, the cost of consulting is far greater than the cost of opening a company. And the reason is because there are so many hurdles that the consultant has to sort of solve for you, right? Generally speaking, a good consultant, one that you can rely on, will charge anywhere between 20 to 30,000 dirhams to open a business banking account for you. And this option, it has its pros and cons. The obvious negative is that it is extremely expensive. But on the positive side, you have somebody you can hold accountable, and you have somebody who has existing relations within a bank who can get certain terms through for you that might be very favorable. So in case you're wondering, and in case in the interest of full transparency, this is the option that I use myself. Now I'll explain why I don't recommend this, but the way it worked for me was I paid a consultant to open a bank account for my company because I really had no other options. I didn't want to buy any product. I did not trust the digital banks like Wio or Yap at the time because they were extremely new, and in fact they didn't even exist at the time, now that I think of it. And I was running my Payoneer account, but my accountant told me that it's probably not the safest because I was due for a refund. So I needed a business banking account really quickly, or as soon as possible, and this is why I hired a consultant. Now the consultant charged me 20,000 dirhams, and this was a long time ago, so these days the cost will be higher. But basically what I found is I had somebody I could hold accountable, and somebody who was giving me constant updates in terms of what was going on within the bank itself. The consultant also advised me about how I could build a profile so that I could be attractive, or as attractive as possible, to the bank. Now, I must mention to you that my company is an FZE, or a single bank. I have a virtual office. I don't have a physical office. So I was basically the worst kind of customer in the eyes of the bank. Yet I received the bank account within 2.5 to 3 months, and I didn't pay anything beyond what I had paid the consultant. So you might say that, okay, I could have bought additional products and kind of saved my money. But the problem is that when you go for the previous option, which is buying products, you can't really expect accountability from the bank. They'll still take as long as possible. And even if you call them up or ask them for any sort of status update, they'll just feed you some kind of boilerplate nonsense, and there's nothing you can do about it because that's just how the system works. But with a consultant, I found that I could actually hold them accountable. The consultant could actually tap into their contacts within the bank and get some things done. So this is a good option for you if you have nothing else going on, or if you really urgently need a banking solution. If none of those factors apply to you, I would recommend you choose one of the previous options that I spoke about, because this is an extremely expensive option and you shouldn't be using it unless you're 100% sort of, you need an account immediately, right? So those are some of the options that you have to circumvent some of the business banking hurdles here in the UAE. It is a lot of information to consider, and you might be thinking that, okay, this kind of might turn you away from the UAE as a business destination. However, remember that all of these things are one-time problems. They're not recurring issues. Once you get past these hurdles, everything is really smooth. And as I said before, in my personal experience, opening a UAE company is one of the best things that I did for my business, simply because of the amount of money that I'm saving. So that's all for this video. Now, as I mentioned, I have a detailed article on my website, link is in the description, that you can check out, where I list all the problems and all the solutions as well that I've spoken about in this video in far greater detail. So make sure you check that out, and you'll get far more examples and ideas from that piece of content. For now, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. Goodbye.